Nā mai, haere mai, ke tēnei wharekara kia. Welcome everyone to this special occasion where we as a church and as family, friends and colleagues acknowledge the wonderful service of Russell and of Barry as our organists over many years. My name is Jenny. I'm a member of this church community and it's my real pleasure to be MC for you this afternoon. Now, the program this afternoon comprises music interspersed with some information about the church's pipe organs, 2 recollections from previous pastors, and thanks to Russell and Barry from our pastors and our elders. Russell's asked me to introduce the next hymn, and we go from contemporary to very old. The next one is Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And this was written in 1758 by a pastor in England. In the second verse, because we're going to sing all 3 verses in a minute, in the second verse is a phrase, I will raise my Ebenezer. Now, you probably don't come across an Ebenezer in daily life now, and you may be unfamiliar with it. But in the Bible, it is a stone that the prophet Samuel set up to commemorate or celebrate God's help to the Israelites after a decisive battle against the Philistines. So when you sing, I'm going to raise my Ebenezer, that's to do with commemorating this particular help that God gave to the Israelites. So please remain seated while we sing.
Following the hymn, I'll play an arrangement of that particular hymn by a composer who I've just forgotten. Yes, that's right. It was Anon.
Now, this will be a short history lesson, and I assure you it is short. We're celebrating Russell and Barry's service today as organists. However, if our forebears hadn't made the decision to acquire a pipe organ for this church, this celebration wouldn't be happening. The previous church building, with its classical architecture, was opened in 1881 on this site, and the first pipe organ was bought from St Mary's Church in Merivale in 1882 and was used until 1914. The pipework for the second organ was built in 1891 for a church in London, but the organ was returned to the Bevington factory in England at some stage. Here the history gets a little murky, as a group of people from Oxford Terrace Baptist Church was in England about 1913 to 14 and inspected this particular pipe organ at the Bevington factory. Subsequently, the organ was shipped to New Zealand and installed in this church in 1915. This was during early years of the First World War, which makes it remarkable that the pipe organ survived its trip to New Zealand. This pipe organ gave many years of service until September 2010, when the earthquake happened, after which this building was declared as unsafe. We are so grateful that after that September, all the organ pipework was removed from the church and stored in Timaru with the South Island Organ Company. Because in February 2011, another shallow but severe earthquake rocked Christchurch, and the church was munted, as we said, that is, destroyed. Then, in 2017-18, the organ was restored, and new pipes and digital ranks were installed, making the organ a comprehensive and much more versatile instrument. The church was fortunate to receive a grant from the Rata Foundation, and many people donated to ensure the organ could be reinstalled. An inauguration recital was held in 2018 to celebrate the return of organ music at OTBC, at which event both Russell and Barry played. The pipe organ has continued to contribute not only to our worship services, but is played in recitals and is used to teach aspiring organists. That endeth the history. Barry, could you tell us now what you're going to play?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about George Gershwin. You've probably heard of him. He was certainly, I think, one of the most influential and landmark composers from the golden era of American popular music, the 1920s and 30s. He's certainly my favorite composer from that period. As well as hundreds of songs that were written in collaboration with George's brother Ira Gershwin. These are for Broadway musical productions. George was the first composer to introduce elements of the new jazz into serious instrumental and orchestral music. For example, his 1924 Rhapsody in Blue is still a landmark piece of work for choir, for piano and orchestra. In 1935, he wrote the musical score for the black folk opera Porgy and Bess. And I've put together for this afternoon what I call a three-piece suite of music from Porgy and Bess. The three songs are Summertime, It Ain't Necessarily So, and no reflection on last week's budget, I Got Plenty of Nothing.
thank you so much. I love those tunes. Now I'm going to call upon two of our pastors, Julie Chamberlain and Andrew Meek, to come up and say a few words.
Good afternoon. It's an honour to share a few words together on the contributions of these two world-class musicians who have contributed so much to this worshipping life of this church. And since time is short, I thought I'd just share 3 words quickly, and then I'll hand over to Julie. The first word is the word gift. Barry and Russell, you have given us a gift. It is a gift underappreciated by most here on earth, but has a currency in heaven worth more than gold. And that gift is the gift of singing. Theologian Walter Brueggemann asked the question, why do we sing? And he answers, we sing because life is God-given, God-sustained, and God-claimed. We sing to render our lives in all of their rich complexity and honesty back to God. That's the gift we've received. To sing, yes, but more than that, to render our lives back to the one who lays claim to it. And the second word is the word versatility. Pastors and musicians are notoriously stubborn folk, each insisting on worship done their way, on their terms. As a pastor, I'm grateful that hasn't been my experience working with you two. I hope the feelings are mutual. As the church has adapted and changed over the years and across the new settings we've found ourselves in, so have you. You played the Roland organ in that old lounge for a few years. You played alongside our band musicians at combined services. You taught our congregation new songs and new styles. And you even were embracing te reo Māori language. This flexibility, this versatility enabled those sitting in our pews to find their voice within our worship. And the third word is the word service. Having grown up as a child and then as a teenager and now as a pastor here, I haven't known a time when Barry or Russell weren't involved in this place. You've committed a combined 70 years to this church. To coin a phrase, you're part of the furniture. But that phrase does a disservice to your service, much of which happened behind the scenes as you honed your craft week after week.
Besides admiring and appreciating your musical prowess and dedication to the worshipping community, we pastors enjoy a glimpse into your creative process, which reveals, among other things, pastoral care. You consider those who gather. You consider our relational and spiritual and emotional and physical needs as God's people rejoice and weep and lament and intercede together. You join in fully and are so sensitive to the tone and the volume and the style, the mood of those present and the importance of occasion. Your comprehensive knowledge of Christian hymnody is a gift to the pastors you have worked with here, suggesting just the right hymn, often sharing an insight into your faith, as together we have crafted worship services, be they Sundays or special seasons, weddings and funerals. Your extensive support of the reinstatement of the organ and the fundraising events for it have been invaluable. And the friendship that you two share is a joy to observe. You honour and celebrate each other's giftings and experience. And we also enjoy your humour. Russell, yours often at your own expense, your humility in evidence, and Barry, so often that twinkle in your eye.
And so, Russell and Barry, we wanted to say on behalf of the church, you have served us well, and for that we're grateful. But more importantly, you've served your God well, and for that there is eternal reward.
Thank you, Andrew and Julie. And now, Barry, would you like to talk about the contribution that you and Russell are going to do?
Thank you, Jenny. Well, one of the great pleasures that we have here, Russell and I do love to play together, either Russell on organ, me on piano, or vice versa. We've done some extraordinary things over the years. We're going to play something now which is a favourite of ours, and it's from a Bach cantata, cantata number 208, which has a countryside feel, beautiful, rustic, and it's called Sheep May Safely Graze. The arrangement is by an American arranger, a guy called Herbert Colvin, and he's arranged it in such a way that in the orchestral part, the upper part is played by flutes, and so on. So that's played by the piano, and then the chorale melody, which is the part that the chorus sing, goes like this. And so it goes. So it starts with a little organ introduction, which is taken from the very introductory part of the score called a recitative, which is like a little introduction. So we will now play together Sheep May Safely Graze from cantata number 208 by Johann Sebastian Bach.
thank you so much for playing a piece by J.S. Bach, who's one of my favourite composers, just speaking personally. Now I'd like to invite Heather to come up and read out the 2 contributions we received from former pastors of this church. Heather.
My notes state there are 2 messages from former ministers of Oxford Terrace Baptist. However, I think it should read 3. Angus MacLeod would definitely want me to say our thanks on behalf of the MacLeod clan in church during the 60s and 70s. Your commitment, Russell, to introduce us to worship through both church and also through celebration singers leaves my siblings and I with grateful hearts. Your fun-loving spirit came through when you played one Sunday the theme tune to a Scottish TV show of the time called Dr. Finley's Casebook. I will say no more. So the 2 messages I've got written down are from Reverend Barry Denham, who was the minister from 1974 till 1979. Worship came alive as Russell played the organ. He helped us prepare for worship, engage in worship, and sent us out with uplifted hearts and minds. How I've missed his wonderful music ministry since leaving Oxford Terrace at the end of 1979. Now, during the 70s, we developed a wonderful friendship and often played a few pranks. Like the times I hid his organ shoes or jammed them tight with paper. Sometimes I put little blocks of wood under some of the pedals, and on one occasion I removed the organ fuse from the switchboard. Russell was not slow to respond. He disconnected the cable from the microphone to the pulpit socket and hid it. Also, one morning, he completely rearranged the pages of my sermon while my attention was drawn elsewhere. One evening service, we had a dreadful guest preacher from the USA. After the opening acts of worship, Russell and I were sitting together in the pulpit. Above the pulpit surround, only our faces were visible. But according to my wife Annette, as the speaker droned on, we sunk lower and lower and finally disappeared from sight. Now, invisible to the congregation, we enjoyed a bit of a chat before concluding the service and avoiding the grumpy comments of the worshippers. We hurried home. Russell, I honour your long and faithful years of service. You've helped thousands to worship well the Lord their God. So take a good break. Your friend, Barry. The next message is from the Reverend Scott Cadman, who was here from 1997 to 2006. When I came to Terrace in 1997, there were 3 institutions. Colin Hampton, the church secretary since 1962, the choir singing since 1882, not all the same people, and Russell Kent, who had already had Methuselah in his sights. Russell's love for the organ was evident, not only in his excellent musicianship, but also his stewardship of the instrument. He would delight in showing me all the new electronic components the organ now had, which, as I understood, enabled him to program all the stops for each piece of music. I was never brave or cheeky enough to ask him if that made the organ like a pianola. Just press the pedal, smile, and look like J.S. Bach. But I knew, as did the congregation, that this was not the case. While Russell took his role as organist seriously, he was usually up for a laugh as well. I recall on one occasion choosing my favourite hymn, I Cannot Tell. The tune is Londonderry, as in the Irish city, air. On the order of service, I wrote London, as in the city, derriere, slap, and so Russell read it, and I could see his shoulders beginning to shake with laughter. So taken was he that he took it around the choir, who duly appreciated the slightly irreverent attempt to liven up a written order of service. Finally, having caught Methuselah up, Russell retired for the first time. It left us with no organist, and good organists were hard to find even then. To Russell's eternal credit, he suggested to me that a certain Barry Brinson might help out, possibly for 2 Sundays a month. So I rang Barry thinking 2 Sundays a month's better than none, and to my delight and relief, he agreed. Now Barry is an excellent musician, although he brings a slightly different mix to the keyboard. I'm not sure Terrace had a jazz pianist and theatre organ aficionado leading the music before. Not that he was limited to those 2 genres. He played the organ well and the piano beautifully. All new people bring a new dimension to a church's life, and Barry was no exception. Barry started blessing the church, worship and ministry with his inimitable style, which we all genuinely responded to and appreciated. But alongside, he also found Terrace to be a community that refreshed and invigorated him, so much so that within a matter of weeks, he said, I'll play 3 times a month, which pretty much became full-time. Like Russell, Barry has a sense of humour, which I found one Sunday is prone to emerging unexpectedly, but with devastating effect. I was doing a children's talk. Underneath my shirt, tie and suit jacket, I wore my Hurricanes jersey. Tragic that I was. No one at the time knew I had it on under my shirt and jacket. The theme, as I recall, was, it's not what's on the outside that matters, but what's on the inside. I'm pretty sure you can see where I was going. So I took off my jacket, and then I worked my tie. By the time I started on my shirt buttons, the church was wondering if I'd finally lost it. Barry slipped up to the, unbeknownst to me, to the piano and started playing the music to The Stripper. The church erupted in laughter and sheer delight. It simultaneously both ruined and made my children's talk. Barry, all I can say after all these years, I was just glad you didn't awaken any burlesque thoughts in me. Undoubtedly, the church is blessed to have 2 such excellent musicians helping in worship of the church for so long. Thank you to both you, Scott and Louise.
After those stories, I wonder if we will get slightly more serious, Barry. You're going to introduce the next item for us.
Next item is a bit of a surprise, actually. Looking around, where are we? We have with us today a very dear friend whom we all know, love and respect. And just chatting to him yesterday, I said, what about bringing your violin this afternoon? So he's brought his violin. And we know who this is, don't we? Right, okay. Just don't hide in the corner, please come round here. Oh, no, please, oh, come on. Yeah, that's the story. Okay, look, we're going to reminisce a few things that we have done together over the years. The first is a lovely tune written by Ralph Vaughan Williams. It's called Down Ampney, and it's set to words of a lovely hymn, Come Down, O Love Divine. Down Ampney, I think, was an area where Vaughan Williams lived, and this is just such a lovely tune. We're going to play some little variations on this. we get to the fun bit, a surprise. If you feel so moved to burst into song, please be our guests.
Fantastic. I hope that all jazzed you up a little bit. Now I'm going to call on Keith on behalf of our elders to come and say a few words of thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. On behalf of the church, I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon to share in this formal acknowledgement and celebration of the many, many years of service that Russell and Barry have given to this church community and to the worship of God here at Oxford Terrace. We acknowledge that many of you are here from the wider New Zealand and Christchurch musical communities, and that you and the organisations, sorry, had to put that in there, are a part of, have experienced the wonders of the massive musical talents that these two gentlemen possess. Russell and Barry, we want to not only acknowledge your talents and passion for leading this community in worship, but also the sacrifices of time and energy that you each have made and put into the music and the worship in this place. We are sure that at times you have chosen to lead us in worship when you really would have preferred to have been in the pews and taking a more contemplative part. Thank you for the many times that you've put yourselves ahead of this community. This community ahead of yourselves. Sorry. Jan, we know and appreciate that a commitment like Russell's is also a big commitment on your part, and thank you for supporting and being alongside him. And Barry, we remember Anne fondly, and we recognise her support of you as well, and appreciate her commitment to you too in this place. It's been a tradition here that when the postlude was played during the closing of our service, a PowerPoint slide would appear with the name of the piece being played on it. This was very helpful for those of us who were enjoying the music but weren't quite sure what the name of the piece was, or who had forgotten the name of the composer, Russell. Some of you may have noticed that more recently, the postlude slide features a request not to applaud at the end. And there's a story behind that. For quite some time, possibly years, we didn't quite appreciate that for Russell and Barry, playing the postlude and the songs and hymns, was a deeply meaningful act of worship. And although many of us applauded out of gratitude for their playing, it was their earnest intention that we would sit quietly and continue to contemplate God as our service drew to a close. Russell and Barry, we apologise to you for those times that we failed to recognise the intent, and that our applause took away something from the beauty and the worshipful spirit of the music and of your playing. We have to confess that for many of us, who can barely pat our heads and rub our stomachs at the same time, sitting here having seen you at the organ console with both hands and feet moving across the instrument so smoothly, holding back our applause was difficult. And so it is with deep gratitude and a recognition of your wonderful and faithful years of service for the enjoyment, joy and contemplation that you have instilled in our worship through your leading and musicianship. We want to present you each with these certificates. And we have another presentation to make in the near future to you, and we'll be in touch with you when that time comes. Come on up.
Well, I have to say I'm speechless. It's just been such a wonderful thing to use our gifts in the service of this community and in the service of God. We're just so grateful. And that's about all I have to say, Russell.
Thank you, Barry. It's just been a joy. The years seem to have gone so quickly. And you think, oh, I've worked here for about 58 years, and it doesn't seem any time at all. But I'd especially like to thank Jan and the family. Jan has been an organist's widow for many years and sat in the pews on her own or in the choir, and has given me tremendous support, as has the family, who's had to put up with me taking off for rehearsals. So to you, Jan, and to the family, thank you for tremendous support over the years. I couldn't have done it without your wonderful support. And also, look, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of those who've helped prepare the afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've thoroughly enjoyed it too.
Yes.
It's very good, and especially to Heather and Jenny and Karen, who's helped so much with overhead projector slides and with preparation of this. So to all of those who've helped prepare for the afternoon, thank you very much for all the work that you've done. And particularly thank you to the church for putting on the afternoon for both of us. And thank you all for coming. We've just hope you've enjoyed the afternoon, and thank you for your support over the years. It's just been a great joy and a pleasure. I just count myself very lucky. I've been lucky to have a great congregation to work with, and I've been very fortunate, I think, with wonderful pastors over all the time that I've been here. I was scared stiff on my first interview with Angus MacLeod. We've got Heather here, and Angus and the choir master and two deacons. I was auditioned at St John's Church in Brindua, where I was organist there at the time, and they wanted to hear hymns played and, of course, some Bach and all the rest of it. And then they said, we'll let you know how you got on. And I think, of course, there was no one else who'd applied, so I was the last left. But anyway, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your tremendous support over the year. As many of you know, there's been three in our marriage, Jan, myself, and Bev. I won't say any more. So thank you very much, everyone.
Russell, we haven't quite finished with you yet. As Baptists, we are not generally big on hierarchy or titles, but sometimes we do make exceptions. Being called emeritus is a selective mark of distinguished service, and in this case, the elders and members of this church have discerned that Russell, your 58 years of being an organist at Oxford Terrace, together with your deep knowledge of hymns and their suitability for use with different themes and settings of worship, and your musical leadership of our worship to God in this place and community, are indeed distinguished. For these reasons, Russell, we wish to appoint you as our organist emeritus. The word distinguished is not to be confused with the word extinguished. The term emeritus does not necessarily signify that a person has relinquished all the duties of their former position. Indeed, they may continue to exercise some of them, and we hope that this will be the case. Russell, we recognise that this instrument here is a part of you, and you are a part of it. You alluded to that before in your comments. We hope that the role of organist emeritus will help you maintain your links with the organ, that you will help us look after it, that you will continue your teaching, and that you will play it from time to time. Thank you for 58 years of massive contribution to music and to worship here at Oxford Terrace Baptist Church.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest artist, Jeremy Woodside. Many of you will know of Jeremy's contributions to Christchurch's musical life, but you may not know that Russell was Jeremy's first teacher when Jeremy started learning to play the pipe organ at a young age. Jeremy, we're delighted you can come along today, and would you like to introduce what you're going to play?
Jenny said casual wear. I think I took that too far. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here today to perform for you on my favourite organ in the city and to celebrate the career of these two illustrious gentlemen. I, like Russell, get far more nervous public speaking these days than I do performing. The piece I'm going to play is the middle movement of a 5-piece suite called Lay My Burden Down by the British contemporary composer Ian Farrington. The 5 pieces are based on spirituals and gospel songs and are heavily influenced by jazz and blues. A bit of a shameless plug now, but you can hear the full set right here next Saturday at 4 o'clock. So this is Amazing Grace.
Thank you, Jeremy. There's actually been quite a theme about the versatility of this organ today. Now, just before we finish and sing a last hymn, there's one person that we really need to acknowledge, and this person has contributed much to Oxford Terrace Baptist Church's life and worship in their own right. She is a role model for many of us, and today we want to acknowledge one part of her service, that is, her support for Russell and his musical endeavours. So Jan, would you please come forward? Now, because you've been good and sitting so long, it's time to stand up and we can sing the last hymn together. Russell, can you play for us?